Okay? It's your act, it's the act of filing a false document, false documentation, perjury. But if you simply say, yeah, you're right, I can't pay that, $2,000 tax liability, I honestly owe it, the IRS can and will garnish your wages from now until kingdom come, okay, but you wouldn't necessarily have a basis for imprisonment for that. Okay, then we go a little bit farther down the line, and we have things like tort liability. You get into an accident on I-75. You're texting while you're driving 80 miles an hour down I-75, ram into the back of another vehicle, causing significant bodily harm and injury and property damage to another driver and the occupants of the vehicle. Okay? That is certainly a wrong against an individual. And this will bring financial consequences to you, financial liability. Remember in our last class did we talk about liability, concepts of liability in the last class? When we did torts? I'm not sure if we did or not. There's different types of liability. Contractual liability and tortious liability. Okay, I'll probably talk about it more, but this will kind of be an introduction to it now. Contractual liability is liability that is created by the fact that you signed a contract and you agree to pay a certain amount or to do a certain thing. Tortious liability is created by your failure to act with reasonable care. This will create a financial consequence, and this financial consequence is within the civil realm. At its worst, and again, I didn't have this in the notes, but I just wanted to share this with you very briefly. At its worst, our court system will enforce punitive damages. A corporation's worst nightmare is a punitive damages award, because that is if a corporate act, the act of an employee, is considered to be so egregious that it usually requires a pattern of wrongful conduct, a pattern of egregious, willful, wanton behavior or misbehavior, that the court will enforce damages far in excess of what the actual economic damages are, multi-million-dollar verdict against a corporation, to punish them, specifically to punish them for their willful, wanton disregard of the rights and obligations that they owe to other people. Punitive damages are rare, but our court does indeed have the ability in our civil system to enforce that. Okay? This is punishment, right? And this is the power of the court to punish. When we get down more this way, this is the power of the court to compensate you to right a wrong, right? If they're enforcing a landlord-tenant agreement, that's righting the wrong that the landlord has incurred in the lost rent. The tort liability is righting the wrong of the accident, the injuries that were sustained, the property damage that was occurred. But at its most extreme, the court does indeed have the power to enforce punitive damages. Okay? All right. And again, criminal cases are filed by the state. Civil cases are filed by the individual. The plaintiff in every single criminal case is the state of Florida. The state of Florida is the one that is pursuing the action. If you are a victim of domestic battery, domestic violence, you cannot bring a criminal charge against your abuser on your own, right? That would have to be filed through the state attorney's office. The state attorney would have to agree to bring the case. It would have to agree to press charges. And they will often have standards that that's kind of a whole nother thing, but there's going to have to be, generally speaking, a basis, a reasonable basis for them to, believe they'll be able to prove that, you know, that crime occurred, okay? You can't put your batterer into jail on your own. You rely on the state to do that for you. However, what you could do, okay, if you were a victim of domestic battery, is to file a civil action against that individual for assault or battery, seeking financial compensation against that individual. That wouldn't, so if Bill Cerrone's office, state attorney's office says, no, there's not the basis for a criminal charge, lack of evidence, whatever.
Okay, I was gonna say, like,
I'm sorry?
It could be like a he said, she said, and then like the cops show up and then somebody got to go to jail and then, well.
Right. The biggest issue in domestic violence cases is, quite frankly, failure of a victim to cooperate, failure of a victim to testify.
What about restraining orders?
What about them?
Is that like a contract for that person to stay away from you, or is it?
Say that's gonna be more in the criminal realm.
Criminal, right?
That's gonna be more in the criminal realm, because with if a restraining order is violated, that will be the penalty for violating a restraining order will be probably some type of incarceration, whether it's 30 days in jail or, you know, at its most.
Right. So
Again, I don't know exactly what sentencing looks like for restraining orders, but
yeah, no.
But yeah.
When you file a restraining order,
You wouldn't file.
Is notified?
You wouldn't file a restraining order, the state has to file a restraining order.
Okay.
The state has to do it. Because again, they have this power to punish. There really isn't an equivalent in the civil system. You really can't have, I guess you could technically have a contract with two people where they agree to not talk to each other. But then, you know, is that what most divorce agreements are? But for there to be teeth behind that restraining order, and the potential for jail time if it's violated, obviously, that's coming. That's a criminal action coming.
So it's okay to think of like criminal as jail time, misdemeanors, felonies, whereas civil is just financial compensation.
Right.
Nice way to sum up what it took me 20 minutes to
No,
say.
no, I was
yes,
just
that's
asking.
exactly
Okay.
it. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. This is financial. This is loss of freedom. However, there are areas where there can be overlap, right? O.J. Simpson, I've given you that example, right? Okay, that was one act, allegedly murder. California jury disagreed, but a civil jury said that wrongful death, they believe that it did indeed occur. It's the same exact action. The death of two individuals that could have had both civil and criminal liability. In O.J.'s case, it only ended up having civil liability. Guys, for every single person who is in Rayford on a first-degree murder charge, my guess is that they have a completely valid basis. The victims of those crimes have a completely valid basis to pursue a civil action against them.
Can you pursue a criminal and civil?
Absolutely. Well,
That's what I was
you can, in the sense that, again, the state's gonna pursue the criminal action, the individual can pursue a civil action.
But it needs to be two
The
separate
family.
cases?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. It would be two completely separate cases, two different burdens of proof. The criminal case has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. There has to be in order for the state to exert that power to punish, they need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime has been committed. Again, this is a tremendous amount of power that the state has, right? And the ability to take away your freedom. Freedom by Americans is highly coveted, highly valued. Okay, so we have strict procedures in place to ensure that if the state, with all its resources and all its power, is going to be able to have the power to take away that ability, your freedom, they have a high burden that they have to meet. Money doesn't bother us. Yes.
So, for example, like the case that's going on right now up north with the fraternity student who died, who was drunk, fell down some stairs, they had a big party.
Okay.
The other students are being charged with some type of manslaughter charge, I
Mhm.
think, because they were negligent and dressed him and cleaned him and everything before they called 911 however many hours later.
Right.
So that's criminal.
Yes.
But can the student's family, they can sue those same students civilly and probably sue the school civilly or the fraternity civilly?
Yes.
So they can name
Wow.
multiple.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, well, that's my for sure.
I would say that, yes, there would absolutely be a negligence charge, a battery charge, an assault charge. Excuse me, shouldn't be using the term charge. I should be using the term, when we're talking about in a civil context, a claim for damages based upon assault, battery, and potentially negligence.
If they're already going to jail?
No.
No, I mean, if they've already done a criminal case and they're
Mhm.
going to jail, and then they choose to do a civil, how will they ever get the money if?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So remember I said a second ago, I said there's a basis for a civil action against every single guy. I shouldn't use the term guy, but it tends to be disproportionately, unfortunately, men charged with first degree murder. Man or woman in Rayford, Stark, you know what I'm talking about, right? State prison, okay. Why aren't most of those cases filed?
They don't have any money.
Because that guy's there for life. He's not working again. He doesn't have any money. Family probably doesn't have much. There just isn't. It's just not worth the effort to go pursuing a civil judgment against somebody who's going to be spending the rest of his life in prison. Okay. Now, going back to a point you made, would a civil case, a criminal case, have to happen first, or a criminal conviction have to happen first? No. Let's say, for example, in your fraternity example, let's say that a jury found them not guilty of aggravated assault or battery, whatever. The state wasn't able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the fraternity brothers committed a crime. The family can still pursue a civil action and might win it because the burden of proof is lower. And the burden of proof against those fraternity brothers for a civil action is either clear and convincing, probably not clear and convincing, it's probably going to be just preponderance of the evidence. The preponderance of the evidence shows that they assaulted him, battered him. I mean, there's video.
Now, I know there's also like a law that states like once you've been tried for something, you can be tried again. Now, is that not true for like say you were tried for exactly what you're saying, assault and criminal, you're found not guilty? Can you be tried for assault in a civil case and be found guilty?
That is a double jeopardy clause, which is referring exclusively to criminal actions.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
So
Double
that's-
jeopardy means that you cannot be charged. I know I'm not going to say this correctly, and I can hear my friends from the state attorney's office saying, "You're saying it wrong." Not be convicted on the same charge twice.
Right, you said it. Mm-hmm. I read
Tried.
about that.
You can't be tried on the same.
Tried.
Tried on the same
Uh-huh.
charge
Mhm.
twice.
Mhm.
Okay. There can be a lot of argument about what's the same charge.
Gotcha.
Right.
A lot of gray area,
Mhm.
sometimes between whether something is the same charge
Mhm.
or not. But that's wholly different
Okay.
than civil responsibility or civil liability.
Okay.
All great questions, guys. We've
So will
actually
the-
jumped way ahead into torts, which is totally fine, but
Will the student, will they file a civil claim against all parties at once, or will they file separate civil claims, like against the students, individual students, against the fraternity, against the college, or will it all be wrapped up into one civil case and all of them try the same?
likely all in one case. Likely all in one.
It's complicated.
So if
It can be very complicated, especially if you've got, like, for example, State University involved and some very different standards for liability for State University versus individuals. But generally speaking, I think that would be one wrongful death action, because there's also statute of limitations on wrongful death actions. They only have a certain period of time. They can't wait
Yeah, right.
for multiple
Right.
cases to go through the system, they need to file it
Right.
timely. Whether they might all be tried together could be a wholly different question, but my short answer for that is yes. It would be one wrongful death lawsuit brought against all the fraternity brothers and the state university and probably the fraternity as well. Yes?
You answered.
Oh, okay. What's the distinction there in that circumstance is like sovereign immunity? Okay.
The university.
For example, if that had happened at the University of Florida or any Florida State University, the limitation on the university's liability, I believe, would be $200,000.
Automatically?
That is the most, gosh, is it one? No, it's two. I'm pretty sure it's two. Depends on if it's per occurrence or per incident, but let's just say two for our purposes. The maximum amount that the family could obtain against the university, short of extenuating circumstances of willful wanton misconduct on behalf of the university, proof that the university acted willfully, wantonly, recklessly, the limit of liability would be $200,000. That's the concept of sovereign immunity. All state agencies in the state of Florida have that protection. Universities, schools, FDOT, county, police departments, sheriff's office. I mean, every state entity basically that you can think of has that liability protection that protects them from multi-million-dollar verdicts. A lot of people have issues. A lot of plaintiffs' attorneys don't like that protection that the state has. But it's a very, very long-standing concept in our Florida legal system that our state entities have that protection. Interesting thing about your fraternity brother scenario that's distinct, like from your scenario, talking about filing a wrongful death action against somebody who's on death row or is serving a life sentence or multiple life sentences. Let's not bother filing the civil wrongful death action against the guy on death row, right? He's gonna make 3 cents a day punching out license tags. It's not worth the effort. What about those guys in the fraternity? What's the biggest asset they have? It's not mom and dad.
Their future.
It's their future. Okay, it's their future. They're college-educated guys. I'm married to a fraternity guy, so I can say this. They're, usually smart, ambitious, guys who want, probably have futures ahead of them and probably have the ability to make a good amount of money if they apply themselves, right? Their biggest risk they face from a financial standpoint is garnishment of their wages, right? A judgment that's entered against them for however many hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, that they could essentially spend the rest of their life trying to deal with. Okay? So that's the big factor there for youth. Like I said, I might have shared this with the class before. In a different context, I've had somebody say to me, why do I need to set up an LLC on this startup, What's the worst that can happen if I don't have any assets, I live in my mom's guest room, kind of thing. Okay, yeah, you don't have anything now, but the whole reason y'all are in college and doing all this to engaging these courses to get better and to learn more is so that you can earn money in the future, right? So again, that the potential future wage loss is a big issue. All right, well, we got really deep into torts tonight and some of these bigger concepts, which is really, really good. But we'll certainly be going back to some of these concepts. Any questions about, has everybody kind of seen how these concepts evolve? Has everybody, first of all, has everybody done the torts lecture? Uh-oh, okay. I won't say who's done it and who hasn't, but, all right, fair enough. Okay. Let's go back to branches of government. When you are studying the material on branches of government, one of the biggest things I want you to understand is the concept of checks and balances. how our government is structured in such a way that it is designed for there to be a balance of power, so that no one